awesome seeing you all here, looking out on the faces that are in this room right now. Mike, better?
There we go.
It is awesome seeing you all. For those of you that either don't know me or haven't seen me in 30 years, I am Scott, or Scotty, as Dad would call me, and I'm his fourth child, and favorite, of course. What do you say about the person that was the single greatest influence on you in your life? And I thought long and hard about that, and I don't know that what I'm going to say is going to do justice to anything, but I had some things that I wrote down and it all kind of came together into kind of a theme. And the theme starts with love, and I think it's appropriate to. I have to release, sorry. Appropriate to actually take a quote to start this with. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. I'm sure that's familiar to a lot of folks. I used to tell my kids that love is a verb, not a noun. Those of you who are versed in grammar could rightly correct me and say that it's actually both, and yeah, it is. But my point was that you can tell a lot more about the depth of a person's love by what they actually do than by what they say. And by that metric, my dad loved deeply. You can also tell a lot about a person when you see them react to an emergency situation. When they don't have time to think, the reptilian brain kicks in, and they go on 100% instinct. And I thought of a story that I got to see my dad in that type of a situation. For those who don't know, we lived in Germany for about 3 years, back in the late 70s, up into the 80s, early 80s. And while we were there, we did a lot of camping around Western Europe. So we're on this one road trip, no recollection of exactly where we were, who was with us at the time. But we were at a rest stop. Boys were all at urinals, doing what boys do at urinals. And as we were wrapping up, my little brother Eric, who is always in a rush to go anywhere, gets a little bit aggressive and actually zipped himself up in his fly. So not exactly a life or death situation, right? I think Eric probably thought it was, but he was all of 7 or 8 years old. He was crying, he was in pain, he was scared, and clearly needed help. And while I sat there and looked on dumbfounded, I remember my father getting this intense look in his face, literally running over to where Eric was to immediately help him with a total seriousness about it. And it was that moment I really saw how much my father loved my little brother, and how much he deeply cared for him. Just that instant reaction that he didn't even have a chance to think, all he could think of was help Eric. And he did the same kind of thing over and over for me as I was growing up, not that specific thing, but other things where he just reacted. And there was a time in my adolescence where I felt like I was making it a full-time job for him. But I never had a doubt that my dad loved me very deeply. He taught me a lot in his life. He taught it through stories, he taught it through philosophical debates, but most importantly, he taught it through his actions. For those who knew him, he loved to tinker. He wasn't an engineer, but he had an instinctive understanding of how things work. He was able to work on stuff himself, and as a result, something broke in the car, we needed some renovations on the house, whatever. More often than not, he did it rather than hiring it out. And from a very young age, as early as I can remember, in fact, I learned a lot at his side, probably getting in the way and causing trouble more than helping him early on. But ultimately, I developed skills at his side that I'm able to leverage today, both personally and professionally. He was a really hard worker, and he loved leveraging that hard work for his family. Put himself through college while going to school full time. For those of you who've done that know that's no small feat to do. But he didn't just work hard at his day job. He was obviously invested a lot there, but he also invested a lot at home, whether it was doing some kind of maintenance on the house or something crazy like totally tearing apart and redoing a fiberglass boat so that we could go fishing and go water skiing. He didn't idle on the couch much, but he invested his time doing things that added value to our lives, and I learned a lot about the value of a strong work ethic by watching him do that. He loved people, whether it was his role at Pregnancy Support Center, working on IT systems at church, finances at church, buying a homeless person a sandwich. He genuinely cared about other people, and I'm sure a lot of you here have felt that from him, and why you're sitting here right now. I learned that same appreciation watching him invest in them. And finally, he loved God. You could argue that his actions reflected that a lot more directly as he got older in his life, but even when I was young, his actions back then gave me a foundation for my faith that I've been able to build on over the years. And while we never believed exactly the same, and even though he's a man of very strong opinions, we were always able to have respectful debates on the topic. And fundamentally, he taught me through his actions the value of a strong moral character, the importance of faith in something bigger than you, the importance of having a positive impact on the world. He used to always say, leave the shop cleaner than you found it. And in keeping with that philosophy, I'm positive he's leaving this world a better place than it was when he found it.
Mm.
I love my dad. Maybe not as well through his actions as he did me, but he set a bar that I'll aspire to until I get to see him again. And until then, I'm going to miss him. In the meantime, I am glad his physical and mental suffering is over. I'm confident that by whatever set of rules you want to believe were measured in this world, he did well. Thanks.
In my memory, you were laughing while Dad was standing between you, just so you know. Actually, I have very little recollection of that, so story. My name is Eric. I am the youngest son, and therefore the favorite, because that was when he realized he didn't need any more. Finally, it happened. Thank you, as Scott said. Thank you all for being here. I know a lot of you have traveled a long ways. I know some of you did not know Dad. Hopefully what Scott shared gave you just a little bit of a glimmer into the life of a man of character who did love with action. And we really appreciate you being here. As I thought about what to share today, I was brainstorming for a while about things, memories of different things, whether it was, I didn't have that specific memory, but of other things we did in Germany, traveling together, the things Dad tried to teach me. He was the one by his side. I was the one trying to find something else to do and hide, so I didn't have to do any of the work that he was doing. And hence, I don't have those skills as much either. So. But Dad and Mom both were very patient with me as a teenager, so stories of him bailing me out of jail more than once, and I'm sure that added age to both of them. But I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to put together to share, and I thought, well, what would Dad want said? What would he want to have shared? And then I thought, well, what would he say? And when we were going through some of Dad's things, I came across an old computer tower that he had. I mean, the side was off. It's not connected to the internet. It's, I couldn't even get a thumb drive in. I had to retype what I have here. I found a letter he had written in September of 2006, and he wrote this to someone reflecting about the theme of faith, love, and perseverance. And so I thought, well, I could actually read what Dad would say. And because this was 2 years before his Parkinson's diagnosis, right? 2 years, 2008. And so head was clear, faith was strong. Faith never wavered. The head clarity was what went away. And then I was able to write something as well that I'll share after that. But I want to start by reading this letter. And because it's a letter, I asked if we could have it put on the screen. That way you guys could kind of follow along, because I know sometimes with something this long, I don't know if you can see that, but we'll do our best here. So, September 29th, 2006. I've had some thoughts about faith, love, and perseverance as it applies to us. The first is that faith in and of itself has no strength. Anyone can have faith. In fact, everyone does. They depend on it based on previous experience and their view of the circumstances. The fact is, though, that faith, as we typically mean in our society regarding spiritual things, is misleading. Faith regarding spiritual things typically means belief without evidence, not just belief without complete sight. If you think blind faith is powerful, just have faith in a chair with a broken leg and sit in it. As you pick yourself up, you will know that faith is only as strong as its object. We know that God has given us a great deal of evidence that supports our faith in Him. He doesn't ask us to engage in blind faith. but convicts us to have enough faith to take the first step. In fact, God then supports our belief by revealing overwhelming evidence. All we have to do is study His Word, submit our will, and meditate on it, and it becomes available. Which brings me to the second thought, that there is a key element that is preliminary to change. We are created and born with a central focus. Everything is about me. As we develop and grow in the world, our world enlarges and we begin to cope with the fact that there are other considerations than ourselves. But the world, as it enlarges our view, has a limitation. The thing the world can never teach us is that self is not even the primary issue. The feedback the world gives is, look out for number one, and I've got to be me. The only way outward focus can be learned is from God. Interestingly, though, focusing on faith, love, and perseverance won't make it happen. The change in focus can only be achieved by continuous submission to the God that created us. Once submitted to God, our study can have a new personal meaning. When our Lord said, if your brother has anything against you, I believe He also meant if you have anything against your brother. In other words, if your brother has anything against you, you should be grieved and convicted for your own failure to go to him and reconcile. Likewise, if you have anything against your brother, you should be grieved and convicted for your own failure to give it to God. Then go to your brother to help him also be healed. After all, it is not about you. Your brother is not responsible to you. If he is in need of reconciliation, it is between him and God. I never have a right to be offended toward anyone, regardless of their conduct, brother or not. God never set me up as the judge. That's His job. My job is compassion toward all mankind. It is my observation that us Christians fight and argue a lot. I also have seen people who claim salvation but seem brittle in their opinions. Sometimes folks discuss others in a judgmental manner, obviously stinging over their opinion or conduct. These things seem to exist among followers of Christ as they do in the rest of the world. They would not exist if the individuals were continuously submitted and therefore convicted. They are, however, natural to human nature. What I really suspect is that we don't realize or understand the level of commitment that abiding implies. If we focused on submitting in the tiniest things and experiences moment by moment, i.e. abiding, then when larger issues emerge, the response of submission, running to Jesus, would be much easier. We would already be there. It appears that this subject of submission gets wrongly translated into what we do, responsibility to respond outwardly, not how we relate to God. It ends up spoken as commitment, as though human commitment could accomplish change. I believe that the only thing that can accomplish change is the moment-by-moment exercise of surrender before God. There can be little spiritual faith, little real unconditional love, and no perseverance without submission as a prerequisite. Sometimes we confuse ourselves. We think we can choose or have chosen God. We can choose nothing but surrender. It is the only choice He gives us other than choosing self. We never choose Him, He chooses us. What we can do is always choose submission to God over our judgment. He does the rest. On the other hand, God is always a gentleman. He doesn't normally force us. He will not heal our selfish views unless we are submitted to Him. That's our choice. The world is evil and dangerous, but it is not our worst enemy. We are. We need to internalize an in-depth understanding of God's view of abiding surrender to Him. And being unusually willful by nature, I need it more than most. I wrote this in more of just a poetic form. I started writing this the day I found out that Dad had passed away, and then just finished it finally yesterday. My dad died today, the long battle done. Parkinson's with dementia, the damn smoking gun that fired deep into a life that once was so strong and brought down the warrior who for so long had carried and cared for those in his life, his neighbors, his children, especially his wife. Those who knew Dad also knew he was flawed, but he never once asked in our sight to be awed. He lived in simplicity, a practical man with sweat on his brow and work-calloused hands that he earned on the farm from his earliest days. The skills and the scars, they're shaping his ways. And I knew there'd be work when I'd hear him yell, "Hey son, I've got an opportunity for you to excel." But that work when I went and did it, helped to teach me what I'm still learning now. Not just changing the oil and other know-how, but the character traits to be formed in a man as he seeks to fulfill that which love's call demands. Love God and love people. It's really that plain, yet an impossible task for anyone to obtain, which is why Dad would say that your ego must quit and your will brought before the good Lord to submit for his shaping and molding in his perfect way. The potter must take hold of your lump of clay. Now the shaping is done. My dad has been healed, no longer contained on that potter's wheel, but in his grand home, the one which he said would be prepared for us in the time just ahead. To be with him at last, in paradise found, where fullness of life and perfection abounds. Is this just myth, a tale to help cope? Or is there truly an eternal hope? I can speak only as an amateur lad, but I sure look forward to joining my dad.